Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the complex geography of natural disasters. We are taking a really fascinating journey, moving from the incredible, awe-inspiring forces of nature all the way to our own human responsibility in shaping the outcomes of these events. If you've ever watched the news and wondered how and why natural calamities happen, and more importantly, what we can actually do about them, you are in the exact right place. Okay, let's dive into this.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll look at nature's constant change, define what a disaster actually is, check out the human factor, categorize these events, zoom in on earthquakes, and finally wrap up with how we manage the unpredictable. Let's get right to it.
All right, part one, nature's constant change and the philosophy of our environment. So look, our planet is literally always in motion. I mean, nature is basically just one continuous, uninterrupted process, right? But the speed varies wildly. On one hand, you've got this super gradual change. Think the slow evolution of landforms over millions of years. We don't even notice it. But then, bam, you have sudden violent shifts. Volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, earthquakes, lightning strikes. These happen in the absolute blink of an eye and completely reshape the landscape instantly. And this brings up a really fascinating philosophical point. From nature's perspective, these sudden geological events are completely value neutral. The Earth doesn't wake up and decide an earthquake is evil or a volcano is bad. It's literally just physics and geology doing their thing. But for us humans, well, our perspective is incredibly value-loaded. We love and welcome changes like the shifting seasons, but a sudden flood? Yeah, we immediately, and understandably, label that as objectively bad. Which leads us to section 2, defining a disaster and what happens when hazards actually strike. So how exactly do we classify these bad events? Well, the standard definition of a disaster is that it's an undesirable occurrence, largely outside of human control, that strikes quickly and requires massive emergency mobilization. We aren't just talking about a bad storm here. We're talking about an event that completely upends life, threatens massive injury, and totally overwhelms normal everyday emergency services. There's this really crucial point captured perfectly in India's legal framework, specifically the Disaster Management Bill of 2005. It adds this critical layer to the definition. It says a disaster is a catastrophe of such immense magnitude that it pushes a community completely beyond its coping capacity. The affected area literally just cannot handle the fallout on its own. It's too big. Now, for section 3, let's talk about the human factor and a massive paradigm shift in how we view these events. For the longest time, whenever a community got pushed past its breaking point, we just blamed nature. Historically, we viewed ourselves as these completely innocent, helpless victims just standing at the mercy of mighty, uncontrollable natural forces. The thinking was basically, hey, the earth shook, the floods came, what could we possibly do? But today, yeah, we definitely know better. The modern reality is that human activities actively drive disasters. Sometimes it's direct, like the tragic Bhopal gas leak, the Chernobyl nuclear meltdown, or pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. But we also indirectly supercharge natural hazards. When we clear-cut massive forests, we're basically setting the stage for devastating landslides. When we build poorly planned cities on fragile land, a heavy rainstorm suddenly becomes a lethal flood. Bottom line, we are no longer just innocent bystanders. Moving on to section 4, categorization and vulnerability, specifically looking at the incredibly diverse Indian context. To actually deal with these disasters scientifically, experts group them into 4 broad categories. You've got atmospheric hazards, think cyclones, blizzards, heat waves. Then terrestrial hazards, which originate from the Earth itself, like earthquakes and avalanches. Next are aquatic events, so floods and tsunamis. And finally, biological hazards, meaning epidemics and pest attacks. And here is a really wild, sobering fact. India experiences almost every single one of these. So you might be wondering, why is India so vulnerable? Well, it's kind of a perfect storm. You combine an immense geographical size with massive environmental diversity. I mean, we are talking everything from the high Himalayas down to massive coastal plains, and you add a huge dense population. It creates this unique, heightened vulnerability. It's a gorgeous land of extreme diversity, for sure, but that same terrain and population density means when a hazard does strike, literally millions of people are immediately at risk. Which brings us to section 5. We're putting earthquakes in focus as the most unpredictable hazard we face. Of all the natural hazards facing the Indian subcontinent, earthquakes are just uniquely terrifying. They are by far the most unpredictable and highly destructive natural disasters out there. Unlike a cyclone, where we can literally track it with satellites for days and evacuate, an earthquake strikes with absolutely zero warning. In a matter of seconds, it leaves behind massive structural damage, crushing economic loss, and just immense human suffering. But it's important to note that not all earthquakes are created equal. The origin really matters here. Tectonic earthquakes, those are the big ones. They are massive, devastating, and they impact a huge geographical area. Compare that to localized tremors, maybe caused by mining subsidence or the sheer weight of water in a new dam, or even a localized volcanic eruption. Those are limited in scale. It's the deep tectonic movements that cause the true widespread catastrophes. And this right here is the tectonic reality for India. Geographically speaking, the Indian tectonic plate is moving north and northeast at a speed of about 1 centimeter per year. Now I know, 1 centimeter sounds incredibly tiny, right? But imagine an entire landmass the size of the subcontinent pushing constantly northward, continuously grinding into the massive Eurasian plate. This relentless collision builds up immense, frankly unimaginable energy over decades. And eventually, it snaps, releasing all that energy as devastating Earth movements. That's exactly why the Himalayan and northeastern regions of India are so prone to major seismic activity. All right, finally, Section 6, managing the unpredictable and how we move forward. Since we obviously can't stop tectonic plates from moving, how do we actually cope? The text poses a brilliantly simple, yet really profound question. When exactly does a natural hazard cross the line and become a full-blown disaster? Think about it. An earthquake in the middle of a completely uninhabited desert is just a hazard. But when does it become a tragedy? Well, a hazard only becomes a disaster when a vulnerable population lacks mitigation and management. Since we know for a fact we can't stop the Earth from shaking, the entire global focus has completely shifted. We're moving away from just reacting after the damage is done and moving toward proactive preparation. This means actively preventing the human-made disasters where we can and strategically minimizing the impact of the natural ones long before they strike. And we can actually trace this global shift over the last few decades. It really started gaining momentum with the 1993 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, which finally put the environment front and center on the global stage. Then, the incredibly pivotal 1994 Yokohama World Conference on Disaster Management made it clear we needed organized global action. All of this eventually paved the way for robust national frameworks, like India's landmark Disaster Management Bill in 2005, which finally created structured agencies to handle these crises head-on. Ultimately, robust disaster management requires a total mindset shift from all of us. We have got to completely abandon that old helpless victim mentality. It's on us to take active responsibility, mitigating risks, building way smarter infrastructure, and actively conserving our fragile environment so that we don't accidentally turn natural hazards into completely man-made nightmares. So, I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder today. Given our immense human footprint on this planet, I mean, the deforestation, the sprawling megacities, the endless carbon emissions, are massive disasters truly natural anymore? Or are they really just a measure of our failure to respect and adapt to nature's constant change? Take some time to really think about that and how it changes the way you view the world around you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.